Are you absolutely sure that your nightly private habit is completely harmless? If you're a man over 60, you've probably heard this all your life. Masturbation is natural and harmless. But what most people don't tell you is that your body, after 60, doesn't respond the same way it did at 30. What once seemed like a harmless act, if done improperly or excessively, can quietly lead to consequences that are far more serious than you might think. I'm Dr. Harold M. Levin, a men's health specialist with over 45 years of experience in male physiology and aging. I've collaborated with geriatric institutions across California and led numerous programs focused on restoring natural sexual function. Over the decades, I've worked with thousands of older gentlemen, many of whom had nearly lost hope, and what I've discovered may make you rethink. Something you once believed was completely safe. You might feel relief for a few minutes, but if you wake up in the middle of the night with a racing heart, dizziness, or even a sense of exhaustion the next morning, then it's no longer harmless. At this age, even minor changes in hormones, blood flow, nervous function, and emotional balance can amplify the body's response. And sadly, most men don't realize this decline until it begins affecting their sleep, their prostate, and even their emotional well-being and self-esteem. What I want you to understand from today's video is not that you must stop entirely, but that you must learn how to adapt. Because when done correctly, this can still be a healthy and meaningful part of your emotional and physical life. But if you continue as you did in your youth, you could be facing very real disruptions: irregular heartbeat, erectile issues, chronic insomnia, and even pelvic inflammation in the next few minutes. I'll guide you through 5 common mistakes I frequently see among older men and, more importantly, I'll share a simple yet powerful strategy you can begin using tonight to protect your health, restore pleasure, and reclaim peace of mind. And if you truly care about your well-being, don't miss a second. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, because sometimes a small change today can restore the calm and strength you've been missing tomorrow. So here's the first critical mistake I see far too often: pretending your body hasn't changed. Let me ask you, are you still treating your 70-year-old body like it's 30? You're not alone. This belief, often unconscious, is one of the most common and dangerous patterns I encounter in my practice. The truth is, your body evolves, and ignoring its new language can have quiet but deeply felt consequences. As we age, our cardiovascular system, nervous response, skin sensitivity, and muscular tone all undergo subtle yet profound shifts. Blood flow becomes more variable, nerve sensitivity can dull or become hypersensitive, and muscular recovery slows. Yet many older men continue to self-stimulate at the same intensity, speed, or frequency they did decades ago without realizing that this mismatch may now place significant stress on their entire system. This is not just about fatigue. I've seen men experience sharp increases in heart rate, unexpected dizziness, or even leg cramps after what should have been a relaxing moment of intimacy with themselves. If you have high blood pressure, diabetes, or a history of cardiac issues, these effects can be magnified, and over time, the repeated strain can quietly erode your physical and emotional resilience. And then there's the pelvic floor, often overlooked, yet central to male function. These deep muscles contract powerfully during orgasm. When overstimulated or chronically tense, they can lead to post-void dribbling, groin discomfort, and in more serious cases, bladder control issues. The irony is, what once brought relief may now contribute to physical tension and long-term discomfort if approached carelessly. But here's the good news. This isn't about stopping, it's about evolving. A more mindful approach can restore not just safety, but even greater satisfaction. Shift your mindset from performance to presence. You're not chasing intensity anymore, you're rediscovering depth, calm, and connection with your changing body. So what helps? Start with slowing everything down. Use touch that is lighter, more exploratory. Choose moments when you're not rushed, perhaps earlier in the evening rather than right before bed. Take a few deep breaths before you begin. This calms the nervous system and improves circulation. Use a warm compress on the lower abdomen or take a relaxing shower beforehand to soften pelvic tension. And posture matters. Lying in a reclined, supported position with your legs slightly elevated can improve blood flow and reduce cardiovascular strain. If you feel your heart racing or muscles tensing up, pause, rest. Listen, that's not weakness, it's wisdom. You're honoring the body that's carried you this far. Here's something I often tell my patients. The goal isn't to relive your youth, it's to embrace your present. When you do that, the body often responds with surprising openness. You may find greater nuance in sensation, deeper emotional satisfaction, and even better sleep afterward. And let's not forget the emotional side. Slowing down, breathing deeply, and approaching your body with respect can dissolve guilt and reconnect you with a sense of dignity. This is just as much mental care as it is physical. When you tune into your real needs, both mind and body begin to work together again. So, if you've been ignoring the subtle messages, tightness, fatigue, frustration, consider this your call to pause, not to quit. Your body is not working against you. It's inviting you to rediscover pleasure in a new, wiser way. The real mistake isn't aging, it's resisting the wisdom aging offers. If your body is changing with age, what about your brain? Can the way you seek pleasure also shape your mental clarity, mood, and sense of connection? This brings us to the second silent mistake, one that isn't about muscles or blood flow, but about the mind. While physical limitations are easier to notice, the emotional and neurological shifts tied to aging are often subtle and far more underestimated. And one of the most common culprits I see in my older patients is this: over-reliance on highly stimulating pornography. In today's digital age, erotic content is more accessible, intense, and immediate than ever. With just a few taps, a man can flood his brain with hyper-stimulating imagery designed to trigger the most primal reward systems. For a younger brain, that kind of overload may not leave lasting effects, but for older adults, especially those over 60 or 70, this repeated dopamine flood can quietly reshape the brain's expectations and dull its natural reward pathways. Here's how it works. Sexual arousal releases dopamine, the brain's pleasure chemical. But when that dopamine is repeatedly triggered by exaggerated, artificial scenarios, especially without genuine emotional context, the brain adapts. It begins requiring more and more stimulation just to feel the same level of excitement. Over time, this can lead to what we call dopamine desensitization. What once felt satisfying begins to feel flat. Touch, conversation, or even real-life intimacy may no longer deliver the same emotional spark. For older men, this can be especially damaging, as testosterone levels naturally decline, and emotional regulation becomes more sensitive with age. This kind of overstimulation can interfere with sleep, memory, attention, and even mood. Several of my patients have quietly admitted feeling more irritable, anxious, or emotionally numb, especially when using pornography as a coping mechanism for boredom, loneliness, or sadness. What began as a private outlet gradually becomes a hidden source of disconnection. And here's where it gets even more complex. The content itself. The majority of mainstream porn today is designed for younger audiences, often depicting unrealistic bodies, dynamics, and expectations. For a 70-year-old man, this can create a dangerous mental mismatch. Instead of affirming your current desires and capacities, it sends a subliminal message: you're no longer enough. When the body in the mirror or the connection in real life doesn't match what's on the screen, dissatisfaction grows. And what's worse, it's easy to blame yourself, instead of recognizing that the content itself may be the problem. But there is a better path forward. And it doesn't mean giving up pleasure. Many therapists and integrative health specialists now encourage older adults to explore softer, more imaginative forms of stimulation. Erotic literature, sensual photography, guided fantasy, or even simply reconnecting with one's own imagination can awaken pleasure without hijacking the brain's reward system. This kind of shift not only reduces emotional burnout, it can lead to deeper, more meaningful self-discovery. You begin to realize that satisfaction isn't about chasing intensities, about tuning into presence, emotion, and internal response. If you've been feeling disconnected or unsatisfied, ask yourself, am I feeding my brain what it truly needs, or just what's most available? Try stepping back for a few days. Notice how your focus, mood, and emotional balance respond. Reconnect with what used to excite you emotionally, not just visually. Pleasure isn't just a physical a sense of being seen, safe, and alive. And that starts from within. And here's one more thing I want to share. Many men have told me that after reducing their consumption of high-stimulation content, not only did their sleep and mental clarity improve, but so did their relationships with others and with themselves. It's not about deprivation. It's about reclaiming control over what truly nourishes your nervous system. Your mind is just as important as your body. In fact, they are deeply intertwined. The images you consume affect your hormones, your self-image, and your emotional state. When you feed your brain nourishing, age-appropriate stimulation, you're not just preserving your pleasure, you're elevating it. This phase of life is not a downgrade. It's a doorway to deeper intimacy. You allow yourself to step through with intention and wisdom. You've adjusted how you treat your body, and you've reconsidered what you feed your mind. But have you thought about how your habits affect your prostate? This brings us to the third mistake, one that hides in plain sight and is often dismissed as unrelated: neglecting prostate health. For many men over 60, the focus tends to remain on external performance or sensation. But beneath that surface lies a small, walnut-sized gland that quietly governs so much more than we realize. And when overlooked, it can silently become the root of chronic discomfort, urinary disruption, and even emotional frustration. The prostate naturally enlarges with age, a condition known as benign prostatic hyperplasia, BPH. This isn't necessarily dangerous in itself, but it's significant. As the prostate grows, it can press against the bladder and urethra, interfering with the flow of urine. This leads to familiar symptoms: increased urgency, difficulty initiating urination, weak stream, and the annoying pattern of waking multiple times during the night to empty your bladder. But here's the part many older men miss: the way you masturbate can either help or hinder this process. Over time, habits formed in youth, fast, forceful, performance-driven self-pleasure can create unnecessary strain on an already sensitive pelvic region. Delayed ejaculation, over-tightening the pelvic floor, or using excessive pressure can exacerbate inflammation or irritation around the prostate. This may manifest as chronic pelvic pain, lower back discomfort, or a persistent feeling of fullness in the perineal area. And if a man already has a history of prostatitis or urinary tract infections, these practices can prolong recovery or even trigger flare-ups. One common misconception I often hear is that withholding ejaculation somehow builds stamina. While occasional intentional delay might not be harmful, doing so repeatedly, especially through forced muscle contraction or mental strain, can create long-term tension in the pelvic floor muscles. This doesn't lead to enhanced pleasure or power. It leads to soreness, irritability, and slower recovery time. Now, let's be clear. Masturbation isn't inherently harmful to the prostate. In fact, done mindfully, it can be beneficial. Ejaculation promotes circulation, clears old fluids, and may reduce the risk of certain conditions by keeping the system active. But the how matters deeply. Here's what I recommend to my older patients. Approach self-pleasure as a form of gentle care, not athletic performance. Choose a quiet environment. Take time to warm up mentally and physically. Deep breathing, a warm shower, or even light stretching can prepare the pelvic area. Use gentle stimulation. Allow your body to respond at its own pace, without pressure, to climax quickly or forcefully. And when ejaculation occurs, let it be a relaxed release, not a goal to conquer. If you notice persistent pelvic pressure, pain during or after orgasm, unusual changes in ejaculation, or even slight traces of blood in semen, these are not signs to ignore. They're invitations to check in with a healthcare provider. Early awareness can prevent long-term complications and provide reassurance or intervention when needed. Emotionally, this shift can also bring peace. Many older men feel shame when they can't perform the way they used to, without realizing that their body is simply asking for a different kind of relationship. Treating the prostate with patience and respect becomes a metaphor for treating yourself that way too. Your value isn't tied to intensity, it's reflected in how deeply you understand and respond to what your body truly needs. This isn't about limitation, it's about transformation, and sometimes caring for your prostate with gentle awareness becomes a doorway to better sleep, stronger confidence, and a more trusting relationship with your aging self. So the next time you engage in self-pleasure, pause and ask, am I working with my body or against it? Because honoring your prostate isn't about giving anything up. It's about gaining something far more meaningful, the freedom to enjoy this stage of life with wisdom, comfort, and clarity. If your body speaks through symptoms, your emotions whisper through habits. So let me ask, are you reaching for your body when what you truly crave is connection? This brings us to the fourth and often hidden mistake: using masturbation as a substitute for emotional connection. While the physical consequences of aging are often visible, the emotional undercurrents driving certain habits, especially in later life, are just as real, and arguably more impactful when left unannexing. In my decades of working with older men, I've seen this pattern countless times. A man who has lost his partner, a retiree living alone, someone navigating grief, restlessness, or the quiet ache of social isolation. Over time, masturbation can shift from a healthy act of self-care into a coping mechanism, something used not for joy, but to momentarily numb the discomfort of emotional hunger. Let's be clear, there's nothing wrong with finding comfort in your own body. But there is a fragile line between mindful pleasure and emotional avoidance. When physical release becomes the only form of comfort or connection, it often stops replenishing and starts draining. What once felt fulfilling may slowly become mechanical, leaving a lingering emptiness that's harder to shake. Some men describe this shift as feeling disconnected after climax, more lonely than before. Others say it becomes just another routine, stripped of its meaning. And when that habit is rooted in avoidance, avoiding grief, anxiety, or the silence of an empty house, it can create a feedback loop that deepens isolation rather than healing. Why does this matter? Because at this stage of life, emotional health becomes central to physical resilience. The nervous system, hormonal balance, immune function and sleep all respond to your emotional landscape. If you're masking emotional needs with physical distraction, your body may respond in kind, fatigue, irritability, or mood instability. But here's the hopeful part. Recognizing the why behind your habit is not a sign of weakness. It's the first step toward reclaiming power. Ask yourself gently, without judgment, am I doing this because it brings me joy, or because I want to avoid feeling something else? That one question can shift the course of your self-relationship. From a health perspective, you don't need to eliminate the habit, but you do need to balance it. Add emotional nourishment to your day, a short walk in fresh air, a phone call to a friend, journaling about what you're feeling instead of suppressing it, revisiting a long-forgotten hobby. These small acts reconnect you with something deeper, the part of you that doesn't just want release, but wants meaning. And for those who feel too far gone, too alone to begin again, know this, you're not. The capacity to connect never expires. Emotional intimacy doesn't always mean romance. It can begin with a shared laugh, a kind conversation, or even just sitting with yourself honestly. From that space, self-pleasure becomes not a cover-up, but a reflection of care, self-respect, and acknowledgement of your worth. Many men from earlier generations were taught to hide their feelings, to toughen up, to never talk about longing. But emotional starvation can't be solved with a physical fix. Acknowledging emotional needs doesn't make you less of a man, it makes you more whole. And yes, you can still enjoy touch, arousal, and climax, but the goal shifts. It's not about replacing what's missing. It's about enhancing what's already present. You bring warmth, presence, and compassion to the experience, and that changes everything. So next time you find yourself reaching for that moment of relief, pause and ask, what am I really needing right now? If it's comfort, seek it in connection. If it's peace, seek it in stillness. And if it's joy, then engage fully with presence and intention. Because pleasure isn't the opposite of loneliness. It's the reflection of self-connection. And when you reclaim it from a place of wholeness, it stops being a substitute and becomes a celebration. You've looked at your body, your mind, and your emotional needs, but what happens when your expectations silently become your biggest source of stress? This brings us to the fifth and often overlooked mistake: ignoring erectile changes or becoming consumed by performance anxiety. At this stage of life, it's not always about how you feel, but about how you think you should be feeling. And that quiet gap between expectation and reality can slowly erode your peace of mind if left unexamined. Here's the reality. Sexual function changes with age. Erections may take longer to occur, be less firm, or not last as long. Ejaculation might feel different. Sensation might shift. These changes are not failures, they're natural consequences of reduced testosterone, changes in blood flow, and the body's shifting hormonal rhythm. But many men over 60 and 70 misinterpret these shifts as signs that something is wrong with them. Instead of embracing these changes as part of life's rhythm, they begin testing themselves, often through masturbation, treating it not as self-care, but as a performance check. And this is where things take a turn. When masturbation becomes a self-assessment tool, the experience is no longer grounded in pleasure. It becomes driven by fear, by self-monitoring, by an obsession with control. Did I stay hard enough? Did I take too long? Why didn't I respond the way I used to? These silent questions can spiral quickly into anxiety, which, ironically, worsens the very problem you're trying to fix. Physiologically, this is no small matter. When you enter a state of worry or performance pressure, your body responds by releasing cortisol, the stress hormone. Elevated cortisol suppresses arousal, impairs circulation, and reduces testosterone further. So the more you worry, the less your body can respond. It becomes a self-fulfilling cycle of disappointment, discouragement, and eventually withdrawal. I've seen this exact pattern play out in countless older men who begin to avoid intimacy altogether, not because they've lost interest, but because they're afraid of not performing. They carry this fear quietly, too embarrassed to ask for help, and too hard on themselves to simply allow for change. In time, this internal pressure often leads to reduced confidence, loss of desire, and an increase in emotional distance from partners or from themselves. But let's pause here, because this entire pattern can be interrupted, and it begins not with a pill, but with a shift in mindset. Masturbation, especially in later life, should not be treated as a test. It should be reframed as a form of exploration, relaxation, and connection. It's not about how hard, how fast, or how long. It's about how present you feel. Do you feel safe in your body, at ease, curious, calm? These are the questions that truly matter now. Start by creating an environment of calm. Breathe deeply. Take pressure off the outcome. Use touch as a form of communication, not demand. If an erection comes, welcome it. If not, that's okay too. The experience is still valid. Let your body guide the pace, not your old expectations. And if climax feels out of reach, know that sensation and pleasure can still exist in many forms beyond that single peak. And if you do struggle with persistent erectile changes, don't go it alone. Talk to your doctor. Today, there are effective, personalized strategies to support sexual function without shame. Sometimes it's as simple as adjusting blood pressure medication, increasing pelvic circulation through exercise, or managing underlying stress and inflammation. Seeking support is not weakness, it's strength. It means you're choosing presence over pride, health over hiding. Here's what I tell many of my patients. Performance does not define your masculinity. Presence does. Being connected to your body, feeling deeply, and allowing yourself the freedom to change. That's what makes a man resilient, wise, and fully alive. And beyond biology, there's something else. Self-compassion. Let go of the old blueprint that says your worth depends on your performance. Your worth was never supposed to rest on whether or not your body works a certain way. Your worth lives in your integrity, your curiosity, your capacity to love and, yes, your ability to enjoy your body with gentleness and gratitude. So the next time you approach self-pleasure or intimacy of any kind, I invite you to release the idea that you're being judged. You're not. You're evolving. And this evolution can be freeing. if you allow it. Because when you let go of pressure, your body can surprise you. And when you stop turning pleasure into a performance, you rediscover its real gift, peace. So now that we've explored the 5 most common mistakes older men make with masturbation, the real question is, what can you actually do starting today to reclaim a healthier, more satisfying relationship with your body? It starts with intention. Recognize that pleasure at this stage of life isn't about proving anything, it's about connecting. You've earned the right to slow down, to feel deeply, and to let go of outdated expectations that no longer serve your well-being. Let's recap briefly. We talked about honoring the body's natural changes, letting go of performance anxiety, avoiding overstimulation from modern pornography, prioritizing emotional connection over escape, and not ignoring the health of your prostate. Each of these insights points to the same truth. Your body is evolving, and so must your approach to pleasure. The good news: you don't need to do everything at once. Start small. Choose awareness over autopilot. Approach each moment of self-touch with gentleness, clarity, and the understanding that it's not about chasing intensity, but cultivating peace. Your body will thank you. Your mind will relax, and your heart will begin to feel more at home. Remember, aging doesn't end intimacy, it refines it. You are not broken, you are becoming, and with that becoming comes the opportunity to rewrite what intimacy means. On your own terms, with more compassion, more mindfulness, and more meaning than ever before. So, if this message resonates with you even in a small way, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. What have you learned on your journey? What's one shift you'd like to make starting today? And if you haven't already, consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and tapping the notification bell. Not because you have to, but because your story matters, and this space is here to support you. You're not alone on this path. We'll keep having the conversations others shy away from, because your health matters, your pleasure matters, and yes, your connection still matters in every sense of the word. Let's keep evolving together.